Hey everyone, and thank you for coming to today's webinar. Today we are going to talk about the AI-ready risk leader and the skills that are going to define the next era of compliance. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Remy Rosen. I'm the VP of Marketing and AI Evangelist at Cedric, which of course is the AI-first platform for marketing and communications compliance. And if you don't know about Cedric, Cedric is a compliance platform that's used by senior compliance and risk leaders at leading financial institutions that trust Cedric's three-layer LLM to automate their marketing and communications compliance at scale. And today, I'm joined by two stellar presenters. We have Zachary Plotkin and Dr. Jermaine Kimball. Zach is a managing partner at Madison Davis, a leading executive search firm that specializes in risk, compliance, and legal talent for financial services and fintechs. With over 15 years of experience advising banks, asset managers, and emerging fintechs, Zach has built leadership teams that shape the future of governance, risk, and control. His vantage point offers a unique window into how compliance and leadership mandate is evolving and which skills top executives need to thrive in the AI era. Thank you, Zach. And of course, we have Dr. Jermaine Kimball, who is a compliance executive with over 25 years of experience in financial services and fintech. Jermaine has led compliance and consumer protection programs at organizations including Equifax, Bank of America Merchant Services, and Block, such as Square, Cash App, and Afterpay. As founder of Kimball Consulting Services, Jermaine has advised major firms on regulatory strategy and risk management. And today, he serves as Director of Compliance Product at Cedric, where he blends regulatory expertise with AI innovation to advance responsible compliance. All right, before we get started, if anyone has any question of the participants, please put it in the chat. We will get to it at the end, unless it's a technical difficulty, and then I'll just talk to you privately. And yes, this will be recorded and we will send it to you. So if you miss anything or need to drop, do not worry. All right, let's get started. Zach, thank you for coming. We're gonna get started with you. How is AI most fundamentally changing the role and expectations of compliance and risk leaders today?
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much, Remy, for having me, and Cedric for having me here. AI has kind of come into the fold pretty aggressively over the last couple of years. From a hiring perspective, candidates and clients are expected to have a basic set of knowledge, or at least clients are expecting more candidates to have a basic set of knowledge. And on the other side, candidates are expecting people who they're interviewing with to have a basic knowledge of it. Not from a detailed coding perspective, but more from a general understanding. No one is expecting you to know the world right now, but people are expecting you to know what AI is, how it's going to affect the business, and it's something that's going to not necessarily have a full effect right now, but I think over the next year to 2 years, it's definitely going to come in. It's definitely going to be changing a lot of the way that people think and kind of plan for a hiring perspective.
Yeah, Jermaine, what are your thoughts there? How are the expectations of compliance and risk leaders changing?
I'll take it from the compliance angle, the compliance officers and they're dealing with AI. It's collapsing the time between risk creation and risk detection. 5 years ago, compliance leaders were expected to design controls, publish policies, and run periodic reviews, and AI has completely changed the game for us. Today, we're expected to govern systems that operate 24/7, ingest huge volumes of detail, or make, excuse me, or at least suggest decisions at scale. But with AI, we're now able to do that in a fraction of the time. So, AI has really changed how risk leaders view the handling of compliance issues. Great story. We've seen clients experience the shift in real time. One fintech we've dealt with has, they went from reviewing about 100 marketing assets a week to now being able to do close to 1,000. And that's, utilizing AI to handle the mundane parts of reviewing a marketing asset. Is it, covering all the different regulations? Now the compliance officers focus more on the judgment call. Is this to our risk appetite? Do we feel comfortable with the asset as it is, or should we make slight tweaks? Whereas before it was going back and forth with the marketing and the compliance officer and, having to make concessions or, all of that is now a thing of the past, which has been an amazing change of pace for us.
Yeah, that's a wonderful point. The speed of creating assets is so fast today that the compliance bottleneck is just that much more apparent, and leaders are really expected to move fast on that. Let's talk about the shifting mandate. Zach, from what you're seeing, what are boards and CEOs now expecting from GRC leaders that maybe they weren't 5 years ago, maybe even 2 years ago?
I'd say the ability to come into a job or the ability to run a program from multiple different angles. What do I mean by that? Not only having an understanding of GRC, having an understanding of sanctions, having an understanding of fraud, how AI can officially come in and kind of touch all areas in compliance, in governance, in risk, but the areas that I've seen that have had an effect right now, as opposed to, where I think they're going to have an effect, is in the analytics space more than anything else. Organizations, CEOs, boards, they're looking at the numbers more. They're looking to see how our either our number of SARs or our number of alerts or our number of, how much money we see in returns of fraud are going to come back and help us. So I see this not only from fintechs, but I see it also from banks, where people are leveraging analytics more than ever before.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know fintech leaders are all under a lot of pressure with metrics. Jermaine, what are your thoughts there?
CEOs and boards are now expecting compliance officers to be more strategic enablers and not friction points. Historically, we've been known as the fun police. And compliance officers, that is not our role. Our role is to enable the business to continue on and to grow and not stand in the way. So they want to see real-time risk visibility, model governance commentary, AI ethics oversight, proactive risk predictions, a clear plan for managing your partner and third-party risk. So the major shift is that GRC leaders are expected to influence technology and product decisions and not just react to them.
And I would just add to that, for now, it's always been a compliance officer's job is not about saying no, it's figuring out the right way to say yes.
Hmm.
And using these tools, using AI, using analytics is just another form of showcasing that more than anything else.
Agreed.
That's
Agreed.
definitely true.
We've actually
So,
had a CEO tell us, I don't need another control. I need, confidence that the controls we have are working. And, AIs can allow us to do that at scale.
so let's talk about that at scale. Let's talk about human plus machine. A lot of times we hear like AI is replacing us, AI is replacing everyone, but really it's probably AI is augmenting us, right?
Mhm.
So I'll pose this question to you, Jermaine. What does good human judgment look like in a world where AI systems are increasingly making or even informing decisions?
Good human judgment looks like knowing you can trust the model. One of the things that we've seen, naming no names, there was a federal credit union that used AI in their credit risk decisioning, and turned out that it was the model wasn't trained properly and was making discriminatory decisions about loans. So, and this turned into a huge deal. The CFPB got involved. It made the news. And now there's a whole host of issues associated with, you know, how the human aspect of AI and consumer compliance work hand in hand. So it's about understanding false positives, the human interaction. I mean, the false negatives, training gaps, and data drift. It also means having the humility to recognize that the models are pattern detectors and not moral compasses. So a good human interaction means you're able to apply context, ethics, and consumer apathy and remaining accountable to, for the outcomes and to your customers.
I would just add
Yeah.
to that. You're totally right, Jermaine. I would just add to that from a I think one of the more important pieces that you did touch upon was the training piece, because
Mhm.
in a world where we're so reliant upon technology and where AI is coming in, common sense is something that tends to be lost. People
Yeah.
rely so much on just, following the steps and following what the rules are and following what the models are. Sometimes they don't take a step back and look at the
Mhm.
most basic common sense. And almost, it's not a negative of AI, but it's a negative of all technology right now that we are so reliant on some of it that sometimes we just need to take a step back and have some basic common sense.
And I think that's our job, is to not just tell leaders, hey, this AI will help you scale, but it's to enhance what you already have, the compliance team that you have. It's another tool for them, not a replacement of them.
Yes, I use the example of my father. If something's not working, just turn it off, then turn it back on. Use common sense. The basic model.
Yeah.
But I think we're not demanding of compliance leaders to know how to build a model, but we are asking
No.
them today, how does a model work? What are the basic, nuts and bolts there? What are the unknowns that as a compliance leader I should be aware of? What are the potential risks we should be looking out for? And what are those questions? So I'm going to move on to the next question. That's our great segue. The skill evolution, right? So imagine compliance leaders of 5 years ago, and now let's jump forward to 2025, almost in 2026. What are those new skills or capabilities or understandings that will define the next gen or even current gen, but have to reskill of successful risk and compliance leaders? What are we looking at there? How is AI changing things?
I would say that AI is changing things in the sense of you do need to know the basics of how to do certain things, but now you need to know how to check and what to look for that AI might mess up. From
Mhm.
looking at something that a computer is going to spit back out versus what a person can actually look at. Again, it goes back to basic common sense. A computer cannot be built with common sense in some capacity. I mean, maybe in a couple of years it will be with all the chat GPTs and Claudes and Geminis that we have, but I think taking a step back and understanding what you need to look for from an audit perspective, from a QA perspective, and make sure that you're not creating more work for yourself by putting in the wrong models and putting in the wrong things for your AI generated tool to use.
Jermaine, did
I
you
like
want
this.
to?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I,
go
I
for it.
I love this question. I get this a few times on LinkedIn. What are the skills that a compliance officer should have to not be viewed as antiquated in, the space that we're moving into? And I tell people the AI and data literacy, not coding, but knowing how to question models and interpret results. Technical, and this is my word. I'm coining this, risk fluence,
Risk.
collaborating effect. Yes, risk fluence. So knowing just not just the risk associated, but the influence you'll have over the model itself. So collaborating effectively with engineers, knowing how to work with someone who doesn't understand the regulatory space, but you want to get them just enough where they get the gist of what you need. So working with engineers, product teams, and the data scientists to give them maybe not a crash course in regulatory compliance, but enough where they get the risk associated with the space that we're in. And change leadership. Change is a huge deal. Being able to accept change and knowing how to grow while your environment is changing. So driving adoption, communication, and cultural around new controls. Leaders should be fluent in partner oversight and digital consumer behavior and exposure to, the trends of our entire ecosystem.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, regulatory changes are happening so fast. Even if we look at just the beginning of this year and where we are now, compliance
Exactly.
leaders need to have that down pat. That's one side. The other side is, they need to be, like you're saying, risk fluent and have AI literacy. So I'm going to ask you, Jermaine, first, how can leaders and their teams, everyone under it, how can they build AI literacy and data fluency without needing to be technologists? Again, we don't want them to build the models, but we
Right.
definitely want them to say, hey, is this explainable? Is this a black box model? Like, how do we know what's going on here? How is this decision made? Could we stand behind this if there was a regulatory action? Could we demonstrate the steps that this model did? What would you
Mhm.
say there, Jermaine? What are the skills?
I
How would you do it?
I would say by playing with AI as much as possible. Honestly, I toy around with, Cedric as well as Gemini, ChatGPT, and I pose regulatory what ifs to it to get a feel for how the system responds. I would say the most successful compliance leaders in our space are the ones who act as translators. They can be fluent in both the regulatory speak as well as the AI outputs to those regulatory what ifs. Um, when you're there and you're able to train your model based off of, things that you see, the news that you're hearing about, different regulatory issues, you'll become comfortable in product stand-ups and engineering reviews and, talking to boards about why this should be adopted by us and embraced. That hybrid fluency is a defining skill in this space.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. I love that you have to stay curious. I have a chief compliance officer friend that I was speaking to, and I was speaking about AI and how there's all these hallucinations. And she stopped me and she said, "What is an AI hallucination?" And I said, "Oh, you have to catch up. You know that's where you need to know what the hallucination is before it even gives you the answer. You need to know what are these things, these pitfalls to watch out for." Zach, any advice there? How can they practically upskill their teams? And also, I'm going to shift it a little because there's more recruiting focused. When teams are recruiting, how as a candidate could upskill themselves to be more attractive to a particular role that someone is looking for?
So you and Jermaine hit it on the head. You have to be curious. From a cultural perspective, if you are an organization that is embracing AI, you have to be curious. You have to understand what you want, when you want, and you have to be asking questions. Why are we implementing this? Why are we looking into it? And how are these different AI related tools, meaning ChatGPT, Cedric, Gemini, so on and so forth, how are they going to respond to different answers? How are they programmed? Now, if you don't have a curiosity like that, if you are stuck in your ways, if you're at a traditional financial institution and they do things one way and that's the way that you've done it for 15 years, I don't know if I could really help you. You have to want to do it. We can't make you do it. So organizations will be asking, they should be looking for candidates who have a curiosity. As a recruiter, the way I look at that is based on the type of questions you ask. You know, Based on the type of questions you ask the end client, such as where do you see the organization's technology going now versus in the next 2 years versus in the next 4 years versus in the next 6 years? Is there a culture of compliance and how is it implemented? When, where, and why? What is your risk appetite in regards to where you're growing this business and how are you going to attack it? Are you looking at it from a very niche perspective or a 10,000-foot view? There are questions that you can pose to the person you're interviewing with, and vice versa if you are the interviewee, where you can find out their curiosity levels and even if they have thought about stuff like this. So, how can you upskill? Jermaine said it best. You have to go play with the tool, and you have to go see how these tools would answer certain questions. The other thing you can do, which I will stress in every single webinar I ever do, is network.
Mhm.
Network with people in the space. Ask someone who you're not. Ask someone who you don't know very well a basic question. Most of the people that you ask, they will respond to you. Most people are good people in the world. And if you don't know how to do that, ask ChatGPT. I'm sure it will also give you a way to do it.
That's
I would
like
also, I would throw in,
if you saw the video by Steve Jobs, just ask. Anyone who hasn't
Yeah.
seen it, definitely Google it. It's a Chat GPT. It's a great one. What was that,
Mhm.
Jermaine?
I was just going to add, and lastly, shadow any engineering people you may have access to. So that was one of the things that I was good for. Hey, work aside, can I just watch how you, play with the tool and, how you build the model and I can ask questions and, just use the resources you have available to you.
Yeah,
And I'll say this: if AI doesn't interest you as much,
Mhm.
which again it's something that it's not going to interest everybody, you can leverage other tools and still be involved. Again, I mentioned analytics before. I mentioned fraud before. I mentioned other areas that you can put your skills to better use where it doesn't necessarily have to just be AI focused.
Right.
But you
yeah,
can't
it's
just sit
definite.
still.
Yeah, I'm gonna pose one more back to you. So let's say you have a candidate. They're perhaps thinking about leaving their job. They might be at a little antiquated company that doesn't really have AI in the agenda. What would you recommend to them for specific skills or areas to be really curious so that when they would get to an interview, even with you would say, this person gets it. This person could be an AI compliance leader. They get it. Are there any specific bells or things that stick out to you?
Well,
Pieces of advice?
the way I view things is, I always talk to people about their resume. What on your resume tells me you're interested in a topic if you don't get to verbalize it to anybody? So
Mhm.
if you send me your resume and you don't get to talk to me, what is going to make it stand out that you have an interest in AI? Or what is it going to make an interest in any type of area? There are a number of places you could do it. Sometimes it's in the summary section. A lot of the times it's going to be in your extracurriculars, certifications that you're trying to get, networking events that you're going to, papers that you're writing that you could publicly publish on LinkedIn. There are certain things to show an interest level
Mhm.
just on paper if I don't get to talk to you, if a hiring manager doesn't get to talk to you, those are very basic things that if you don't have the direct experience now and you want to get it, you have to show that you have an interest in it. And how do you do that? Is by adding those basic extracurriculars. Is it going to get you a job? No. Is it going to increase the likelihood that someone will talk to you? Yes. And that's the purpose. We're trying to increase the likelihood. You go to a networking event and you post it on your resume related to AI. Somebody who's in AI, you can go ask, "Hey, I have a question about this. Would you be open to talking?"
Hmm.
And it all it does is start to create networking opportunities. And networking to me is always going to be the most important. Most people get jobs either through a recruiter, they get jobs through their network.
Yeah.
The third option is usually applying, but that's how people tend to get jobs. And you have to be able to put yourself out there and ask questions.
Oh yeah. Definitely. That's excellent. All right. So everyone who's listening, you have to update your resumes if you're looking to move, and definitely focus on AI skill sets and AI conversations.
Can I
We're going to
piggyback
do,
off something really quickly?
please do, Jermaine.
Yeah. So LinkedIn, I learned this a few years ago when I was, doing consulting and trying to interact with more people in the space. LinkedIn became my Facebook essentially, but business related things. So topics that I was interested in, like Zach had mentioned. So AI, I would write little article or think pieces on it, or just the integration between technology and compliance, and it would spark additional conversations with others who began following my page, and that leads the way to those connections that can get you to that next role. So it's like Zach was saying, even if you can't find a way to squeeze it into your resume, most recruiters are going to look at your LinkedIn and they'll see where your interests are and where you may prove valuable to someone else.
Right, because if you're able to do all that information, say you don't have any experience in AI, but you can put on your resume that you self-published an article related to AI and it's on your resume, someone now can see on your resume that you're a published author in that space.
Hmm.
That's more experience than none. And so it's
Yeah,
always
definitely.
worth doing and creating, especially because it's a free tool. It
Yeah.
doesn't
Oh yeah,
cost you money to write anything on LinkedIn.
Jermaine. I'm gonna do a break, and I'm gonna go straight to a different question with you. How do you
Okay.
advise leaders to embrace AI and all these technologies we're talking about and new skill sets, but still being a compliance leader, still maintaining strong governance and accountability and controls? How do you balance these two skill sets?
That's a good question. I would say adopt a sandbox first, scale second strategy. So, test and control environments, build policy activated guardrails, rules that translate directly into system logic. Keep humans in the loop for high risk areas, but document versioning and data lineage, thresholds. Governance and innovation are not opposing forces, and one should enable the other. So we've guided customers through AI pilots where models were made and decisions that were mathematically sound but ethically gray. Being able to navigate in that gray space, I would say, is a true skill of a good compliance officer. Because, the regulations, they tell you what your guardrails are. They're not hard stops if you know how to operate. So, and I think that is a great tool for any, compliance officer to have, is to know how to move within those guardrails. So rather than scrap the tool they built, review checkpoints or ethical review boards and document all of your protocols.
It's very similar to when I first started for recruiting for crypto in 2011, where there's still a very gray area. You have to feel comfortable operating in an area that doesn't have many guardrails, like you're saying. And so a lot of it is just making up what you think the right thing to do is, which is why most people here are in ethical positions.
Mhm.
Let's talk about crypto, and not even just crypto. It could be like any technological era. Jermaine, this is probably more for you. What lessons can you tell us? Technology is moving at such a breakneck speed. It's like we're moving from one thing to another. I remember there was a big technological shift every 10 years, right? Now it's like every year. Now it's every 6 months. How do you advise leaders, compliance leaders especially, who are trying to hold down the compliance for it, to lead through technological change and still maintain a sense of control over their compliance? What would you say there?
We touched on this, earlier in the discussion. Stay relentlessly curious. Find out how the models work, what data it's trained on, what's missing, challenge it. So one of the things that I like to try and do is break the system. So if I can break it, then I know where the gaps are and I know, where we may need to focus more energy. So constantly challenge, the tool or AI or technology that you're using in this space. As a compliance leader, you know what the rules are. So if you can figure out a gap between the technology that you're learning and the rules, you now have proven, immeasurably valuable.
Yeah,
So I would say that, strongest leaders share one common trait is that they're curious and tied to action.
I love
I would
that.
add just one more. I would add one more piece to that, which is don't be afraid to ask your peers if
Hmm.
nothing's coming to your head.
Yeah,
You know, that's the beauty of networking is you have peers that do this in some capacity. Very few industries, you're the only one doing it. So if you can't think of something, two minds are better than one.
agreed.
That's definitely right. And then, so those are two really good pieces of advice. Stay curious and ask someone. I'm going to put that in the networking category, which Zach is a pro at. Let's do one more piece of advice. If you were mentoring a rising compliance or risk leader today, what's the single piece of advice you'd give to them to stay relevant in the AI era?
I would say make it so that AI, your job cannot be replaced by AI.
Mhm.
And how do you do that is you go take a bat to the computer. No, I'm kidding. Um, you
Skynet's
think
already here.
about yeah, think about AI. Their whole job is to help reduce redundancies and make things more efficient. Um, but there'll always need to be some form of checks and balances that are involved.
Mhm.
Understand that you can be part of that group or be one of those people that provides those checks and balances. Human
That's
beings will
great.
always need to have a place. I don't think we'll ever get to a point where everything will be automated. Um, because I don't think we'll give up that much control. But having a basic understanding of where the pain points are and where and how to be the person that creates and stays within those checks and balances is a great way that you can stay kind of ahead of the curve or be in the right position.
That's excellent. Jermaine, closing thoughts. What's one piece of
I,
advice?
I would say don't be afraid of AI or change. AI will not replace compliance leaders. A lot of several of the regulations that we have to adhere to are subjective, and an AI may view it more harshly than a human regulator would. So never doubt that you're going to be needed, but compliance leaders who understand AI will absolutely replace those who don't. So embrace that change and learn it and ask questions and stay curious and do not be afraid of what's coming.
All right. Thank you both. That was excellent. And thank you, everyone who attended. And let's all find ways that we could learn more about AI and stay curious. Thank you all.
Thank
Thank you.
you.